everyone in podcast listening land. I'm Karen Devaney.
And I'm Ann Barner. And we're sisters. Welcome to Sugar-Coated Murder, where we'll discuss
and probably inappropriately laugh about and comment on.
Yep, one of our favorite subjects.
Murder. Oh, and we love to bake. And why not combine our two favorite subjects?
Baking.
And killers. Hey, Ann Barner.
Hey, Karen Devaney.
What you doing?
I am getting together a little baking surprise.
Oh, that's so exciting. I love a surprise, and especially when it's baked.
Yes. So I'm going to do Almond Pillow cookies. Oh. And I went on a search because I love the Almond Pillow cookies at Fresh Market.
Girl, me too.
They
oh my God,
so
I love them.
Good, but we don't have a Fresh Market.
No, we don't. So we need to learn how to make them.
That's right.
Or you do.
Right.
And then we will have them all the time because you will make them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
how perfect.
I found a recipe, and we're going to see if it works out. I don't know.
Hope so.
I've not tried it before.
Well, it can't be so bad. If it's made with almond paste, it's got my name all over it.
Exactly. I love a nice almond cookie, almond croissant.
Yes, that's what I had for my breakfast this morning was a little almond croissant.
Well, you're very spoiled.
I am very spoiled, but I cooked it myself. So
good old Trader Joe's.
I love me some Trader Joe's. I actually use Trader Joe's a lot to buy my croissants, and then sometimes I pass them off as homemade because if they're baked in your oven, it was made at home.
Absolutely. Could not agree with you more.
That's the philosophy of our grandmother.
Absolutely.
Rest in peace, Grandma Seal.
And our other grandmother, me mama, because she had those homemade biscuits. It turned out they were biscuits from the green can, which they don't do anymore. But
green can biscuits.
They do the biscuit. It just doesn't come in a green can.
No, it's so sad.
Now it's flaky layers.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no. It was green biscuits when we were growing up. We had green. And she used to make her own sausage gravy. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
Yeah.
And then she had that yummy barbecue sauce.
That you thought was her homemade, but it was not. It came from S&N.
I don't think so because
or S&S,
it was in a ketchup bottle.
That's what they did. That's how they made. That's how they put it. That's what they did.
I don't think so.
Okay, whatever. She ain't done it. I can tell you right now, she never did that. But anyway,
she did.
I can't remember anything that she actually made on her own except for the sausage and sausage gravy. I'm not sure what else.
And honestly, the sausage gravy was just a little bit of flour in with the
drippings,
scrapings from the sausage that she cooked. So it wasn't, overly. But it was delicious.
I'll never forget when I was in high school still, and I had been in our cousin Bonnie's wedding, and even though I was the ripe old age of 17 and had a full-blown case of mono at the time, I was in the wedding, and I got a little overserved. I would rather say I overserved myself because there were pictures of me drinking straight from the champagne bottle at the reception. But something happened, yada, yada, yada. I woke up on the bathroom floor covered in a blanket with no clothes on because I had puked all over Mom and Dad when they came in.
Oh.
And they had on their evening clothes. So that morning, I remember Mama thought she'd really get me and teach me a lesson. And she was going to make sausage biscuits with gravy. And I ate 3.
Oh, wow.
And I woke up and I was like, God, it smells so good. She thought it was going to make me feel like really sick and nasty. I think I had purged everything the night before.
Right.
So that was the night that I came in. My quote unquote date, who met his wife that night, by the way. His future wife. He wasn't married at the time. Let's just be clear. But he actually was so embarrassed at the shape that I was in that he literally walked me up to the front porch, rang the doorbell, and walked away. And then I went in and Mama was sleeping on the couch.
I remember.
And I had a full-blown conversation with her like I was straight, I was good to go, and I turned around and ran square into the door.
Yeah, I was
because it was closed, yes. And then she said, you are a nut. And from that day forward, she would tell me I was a nut. She'd say, you are the nuttiest one I've got.
Yeah.
So, and I think there was some truth there.
Yeah, but I think it was a term of endearment.
Oh, definitely.
I
think in some way she was a little proud.
A little bit.
I mean, maybe not that I had completely wrecked our family reputation in her hometown, but whatever.
Listen.
I never went back to that steakhouse ever again after that.
I think they asked you not to.
I'm pretty sure they had a picture of me and said, do not let this person enter.
Yeah,
because I threw up on a random person in the steakhouse.
Yeah.
And then my date took me downstairs and locked me in the car so I could sleep it off, and went upstairs and then met his future wife. You're welcome. You're welcome. Matchmaker,
Really?
make me a match.
They should definitely be thinking.
Yeah, and they didn't even ask me to be in their wedding.
That's so tacky.
I know. Ungrateful. That's what they
I don't know
were.
if maybe they felt like you were gonna be a little unruly at the
No,
wedding.
not me. Woo!
Maybe they felt like that tiny little South Hill, Virginia had
Just about enough of,
dramatic.
yeah, I know. And so, yeah, and the funny thing is, about 2 months later, I still had mono, and my spleen was so inflamed from all the drinking I had been doing, and my liver, that's probably where I damaged my liver.
It may very well be.
That almost ended up in the hospital. Like, I was so sick. So, yay for me, but it was a great wedding. Great wedding.
It was beautiful.
And Bonnie and Billy are still together, so yay for y'all.
Yay, way to go, Bonnie and Billy.
All right, so I'm going to get started on my murder.
Oh, yes.
It's a little bit long, but I got to tell you, my husband gave me this murder, and nothing says love like a spouse giving you a murder to work on.
Yeah, especially a spouse that thinks you're a little kooky for even doing a murder podcast.
You're exactly right. We had that conversation.
That says a lot.
I know.
I think you're crazy, but you should talk about this.
But you should totally talk about this. Since you're going to talk about murder anyway, here's one for you. Yeah. And the reason he gave it to me was it was in a town that he lived very close to, and his grandparents actually lived there. And he can remember when this happened. It happened in the 80s.
Yeah, it's always so much more interesting when you've got that personal connection to
it
somehow.
Absolutely. So I don't know if anybody listening is from that area, but I left the street names in this story in case somebody...
We do not protect the innocent here.
We don't... Well, no.
This is not a podcast.
We don't protect anybody, to be honest with you. So anyway, but I left all the names of the streets in there in case people are familiar with the town. But my husband remembers the whole town being on lockdown. And
really?
Yeah, and even where he was from Nanticoke, which is maybe 15 minutes away from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, it's the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton area.
Right.
And he can remember them being on lockdown, and they were really nervous because his grandmother still lived in Wilkes-Barre.
Oh.
And everybody had been told to shelter in place and not go outside.
Really?
Yeah, and
wow.
and his grandfather had died like 3 months ago, so she was alone.
Oh my gosh.
So they were really nervous, but he had some relatives that lived nearby, and I'm sure they either went and got her or they went and stayed with her.
Right.
But yeah, he can remember all of it. He can remember being in high school and the schools were locked down. Everything was, the whole town, like even where he was 15 minutes away, because this guy went on the run and they did not know where he was for a long time.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway,
crazy.
This guy's name is George Banks.
All right. George Banks.
I know, not from What a Wonderful Life. What a Wonderful, Wonderful Life.
No,
Just Wonderful Life.
No, stop it.
What is it called?
No, that was Steve Martin. George Banks when his daughter gets married.
Father of the Bride.
Yes.
Oh, I thought George Banks was also one of the bankers.
George Bailey.
Oh, Bailey.
His name is
Bailey
George Bailey.
Banks. It's all the freaking... But banker, I was so close because of the bank.
Okay.
Anyway. So, George Banks, he was a former prison guard in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, which was not very far from Wilkes-Barre, in 1982. He lived in Wilkes-Barre, and he was a little bit of an oddball. He had some personality traits, and he had definitely been shaped by some racial interactions in his youth.
Okay.
He was a tower guard at the prison, although he had previously served 7 years in prison for attempted armed robbery.
How does that happen?
Back then, there were no rules.
Oh, wow.
You could hire ex-cons.
To work in a prison.
Oh, yeah.
How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Well, he never got in trouble in prison, so.
Okay.
Whatever. So, anyway, he had also served in the U.S. Army briefly, but received a general discharge because he couldn't get along with the officers. So he might have a little bit of a problem with authority figures. There is a syndrome called oppositional or authoritative oppositional whatever. It's when you can't get along with people that are in authority or people that you perceive as authority. So His teachers and guidance counselor from high school described him as a thin boy that wasn't any more trouble than any other boy.
Oh, wow.
That's always trouble.
That's really not good.
But there was a former classmate who was also his street friend and a co-prisoner at the time that he was in prison, not for the same thing, but they actually were in the same, I don't know, cell block or whatever they are in prisons.
What is a street friend? Like
a
somebody
street friend,
that lives on the same street?
Somebody that hung in the streets with you.
All right.
So they hung together in the streets. So
I feel like I need a street friend.
Well, when you hang in the streets, you'll make one.
All right.
So,
I'll work on it. New Year's resolution.
There you go. Get me a street friend. So this guy said that Banks always seemed like he wasn't looking to hurt anyone, but if provoked, he was always ready for a fight. And he always felt like there was going to be a fight. So I don't know if there's some paranoia going in there or whatever. So anyway, Banks had told in the prison, Banks had described the robbery that he was convicted of, saying that he tried to rob a local tavern, and the tavern owner challenged him by saying, "You won't shoot me." And so supposedly Banks answered, "Get ready, you big slob, because here it comes," and pulled the trigger.
Oh.
But he was convicted of robbery or attempted armed robbery. So he never got to the money.
Just the shooting.
He got carried away with the shooting. He was so pissed off at the guy that said, "I don't think that you'll shoot me."
Oh.
So, yeah.
So it was a bad game of truth or dare, kind of.
It was a little bad game of chicken.
Chicken.
Yeah. So this friend said that in prison he realized that Banks was a little bit more dangerous than he had ever considered. And he said that Banks always felt persecuted by both Caucasian and African American races. And the reason is because Banks's mom was Caucasian.
Okay.
His father was African American.
Okay.
So he was of mixed race. And this is in the 80s.
Right.
And I guess growing up, his parents never married. And growing up, his mom, when they would walk down the street together, people would spit on his mother and call her racial names. And as a teenager, Banks said that he had a run-in a couple of times with some angry people because, like, one day he said that he was on the corner eating a donut and drinking a Coke. And just these people kind of came up and started a verbal attack on him and called him racial slurs. And then an angry mob kind of formed and they were beating on him until the cops came. Oh. So he definitely he had grown up with some racial persecution, and he did not feel that either race had ever accepted him.
Oh, wow.
So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind.
Okay.
So some other history on George Banks. He had fathered a child from he actually had 2 grown children by now that were not living with him, and he had divorced, and they were gone. I don't even know if he had contact with them. But he had fathered a child with a former girlfriend, Sharon Mazzillo, and that son's name was Kissamayu.
Kissamayu.
I don't know.
Okay.
That's better than Kissing My Ass, but
Kissing My Ass.
Kissamayu. And he and Sharon were in the middle of a custody dispute. She did not live with him. She lived with her son, her mother, 2 younger brothers, and a nephew that would come and visit, but they did live locally. And so at some point, George collected a few more girlfriends.
Oh, George.
And a few more children.
Oh, George.
Here's the crazy part. All of them lived in the same house.
Okay.
That to me is just crazy. So
the girlfriends, the kids, the whole
yeah, I'm gonna give you a rundown of who's who in the zoo, because it's a zoo. Okay, so he bought a house on Schoolhouse Lane. That just seems so quaint and cute. Yeah. Not really in this house, but so Regina Clemens was a girlfriend. She had a 6-year-old daughter with him named Montezuma. Montanazima. I don't know. It's a weird name. It's got a lot of letters in there. So, and then Regina's sister, Susan Uhas, also lived there and had a 4-year-old son named Bowendy. With Banks.
Bowendy?
Bowendy.
Okay.
And a 6-month-old daughter named Maritanya.
Okay.
Maritanya.
Is that one word?
It's all one word, so that makes it hard for me to decipher. And then there's Dorothy Lyons, who also lived there. she had a daughter from a previous marriage, and that daughter's name was Nancy.
Oh, poor Nancy. I bet everybody picked on her.
And then she bore a son who at this time is 1 year old, and his name is Rudy.
Rudy.
I think it's Rudy or Rowdy or Farunda. I don't know. It's something. But in the house, we have 3 girlfriends, all in their 20s.
Who is picking the names of the kids?
Obviously, he is.
Okay.
Because Dorothy had Nancy.
Oh, that's right.
So obviously, and then these people all have just like common names that you would know, but I guess George is the one picking these names. It's pretty crazy. So they all live together in this house, 3 girlfriends, 5 children, ages 1 to 11.
Wow.
4 of those children had been fathered by Banks, and then 1 was the little girl, Nancy.
This is almost like a sister wives situation.
I know. So here's the crazy thing. All of the wives were Caucasian women.
Okay.
So he then fathered more mixed children. All of them were mixed because he was mixed.
Right.
Okay. So just hang on to that.
Okay.
It's gonna come up.
Okay.
Okay. So the neighbors were not big fans of Mr. Banks.
Really?
He was frequently seen abusing the children and the women in the yard and on the porch. Ugh. Like abusing them, like hitting them,
right.
Knocking them down, calling them names. Most neighbors had strained relationships with him, or they just stayed away. So more than one neighbor had been told by Banks that he didn't want any white trash in his yard, and his own people weren't welcome either.
Oh.
Yeah. So he also said that one day he might clean up the neighborhood and he'd be the only survivor.
Oh, wow.
So they pretty much just tried to stay away from him. So at work, in the prison,
yeah.
One day he had a dispute with one of his supervisors, and he later was in the guard tower where he worked, and he had a gun, and he threatened to kill himself. And his fellow guards had to talk him down out of the tower and not to kill himself. So he's got a little suicide issue.
Wow.
He had told some of his coworkers for a while that there's going to be a race war, and that he was very concerned about the fate of his children because they were all mixed, and he did not want them to live in a world like he lived in, and felt like that they were going to be persecuted in this race war because nobody was going to accept them.
Aww.
So So after he had talked about the race war and then he threatened to commit suicide, they put him on medical leave.
Okay.
And they told him that he needed to go to a mental health clinic. And so he went to the mental health clinic, and they decided he was not overtly homicidal or suicidal. So they just made an appointment and told him to come back on September 29th.
Okay.
And send him home. All right, September 24th, that night. George is at home, and before going to bed, he took a cocktail of prescription drugs and a whole lot of straight gin. And you know, gin makes you sin.
Yeah.
So I can't stand gin because I think it tastes like pine needles and cat pee. But lots of people like it. But I do have heard many times from many different people that gin will make you sin.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, he goes to bed on this cocktail of mind-altering situation. So, from this point forward, I'm not going to say his name. Because I decided
George, this is it. This is the
that I don't want to say his name over and over. I've given his introduction, but now, to me, he's either a-hole monster or a monster a-hole.
All right.
Because of what he does. So, I don't want to give him any undue fame, because this is not about him. This is about his actions.
Okay.
Okay.
I understand completely. And
Yeah.
I'm completely on board with all of those descriptors.
Okay.
Asshole, monster asshole.
He really is. The man is. There's nothing redeemable about this man. And I cannot find an excuse anywhere for what he is getting ready to do.
Oh, my.
So September 25th, he awakes in the morning. His 4-year-old son, Bowendy, is laying next to him. And his 3 girlfriends, each sitting in chairs around his bed. So I have a feeling there was a lot of control going on there.
Yeah.
And maybe in his paranoia, they had to keep watch. Maybe they slept when he went to work. I don't know.
Sounds almost cultish.
It sounds like a cult to me, too. So also, so each of the girlfriends sat in chairs around his bed, and Susan was holding their 1-year-old daughter, Mauritania. So next to the monster is an AR-15, which he gets up and...
He sleeps with his AR-15.
Close by.
Okay.
So he gets out of bed and picks it up and puts a 30-round clip into it.
Oh.
Okay. And then he very calmly turns around and pulls the trigger and shoots Susan 4 times in her chest.
Oh.
Oh, wait. No. First... No, he shoots Regina first. He kills her instantly. Then he shoots Susan 4 times in the chest. She slumps over, and one of the bullets passes through his 1-year-old daughter's back ear and kills her instantly.
Oh, my gosh.
He then shoots Dorothy with 2 shots, killing her. And then he goes over to his 4-year-old son and shoots him in the face, killing him.
Oh, my gosh.
So, one by one, he shoots and kills each of them. And in less than probably 15 minutes, he has wiped out his entire family. But he goes downstairs. Or no, he goes upstairs. And he proceeds to go to each child's bedroom that's not with them, the older children. Mm-hmm. And he shoots each one of them and kills them.
Oh my gosh.
So he kills every single person in that house but himself. Right. That's why he's a monster. So then... he steps over all the bodies, goes up to his...
This has a lot of the same elements, I think, as the story behind the Amityville Horror House.
Yeah.
Right? When that guy comes in and kills his whole family with an axe.
Yes. Yeah. So, he goes to his bedroom and puts on military fatigues and a t-shirt that reads, "Kill them all and let God sort them out." So, this is going to set the tone.
Wow.
So he isn't done. He walks out of his house, and across the street there are 2 men who are trying to jump into a car. James Olson, 22, and Ray Hall Jr., 24, had heard the gunshots from...
And they're like, we got to get out of here.
And they said, we got to get out of here. And so they knew the gunshots were coming from across the street. And so Jimmy grabs the keys, and they're running out to the car, and when A-hole sees them, he runs over and tells them, "You won't live to tell about this," and shoots them both in the chest.
Oh my gosh.
He stands over them briefly to make sure they're dead.
Wow.
And then he takes off. So he gets in his car. He drives about 4 miles to a nearby mobile home park where his ex-girlfriend Sharon lived. So Sharon, she's there. She lives with her mother, her 2 younger brothers, and there's a nephew that comes and stays with them and visits and then goes back. Like, he kind of bounces back and forth. So, when she sees him coming to the door, she's very cautious about what he's doing there unannounced. Because remember, they're in a bitter custody battle.
Right.
And then she sees that he's armed. And so she tries to close the door and keep him from coming in. And he overpowers her and immediately shoots her with the AR-15 and kills her, instantly kills her. He steps over her lifeless body and sees his son, Kisamayu, sleeping on the couch with the blanket covering him. He walks over and holds the barrel inches from that child's head and pulls the trigger.
Oh my gosh.
It's just...
What?
Yeah, when is it going to stop? Meanwhile, Sharon's mother, Alice, has heard the commotion and is desperately trying to dial the phone for help. And her younger sons, 10-year-old Angelo and 13-year-old Keith, are trying to find a place to hide. So Angelo scoots under Alice's bed, and then Keith goes and hides in her closet. The monster walks into the room and grabs Alice. He places the barrel of the gun facing upward against her nose and pulls the trigger, and her head explodes.
Oh, gosh.
It sends brain tissue and blood all over the room. Oh. And poor Keith has watched this from the closet.
Whoa.
And poor Angelo was under her bed. So he sees the carnage as well. And you know they're terrified.
Of course.
So in the meantime, the nephew comes running in. His name is Scott. He comes running in to see what's going on, and he sees his grandmother's decapitated body and runs down the hall screaming. Well, George very quickly reaches him, grabs him up by the shoulder, holds the 15 against the kid's stomach and just unloads and then just drops him like a rag doll. Like this, there's no emotion here. It's just methodical. I'm going to wipe them all out. So as he does that, he exclaims, well, I killed them all. And he walks out.
Oh my God.
Leaves everybody dead. So a call goes out to police in the area of the trailer park to investigate a possible shooting. So there's a police officer who arrives at the lot where Regina and Alice reside, and he sees the body of Regina laying on the ground, and she's dead. So he walks into the house and flicks on his flashlight because I think it's getting to be dark, and he sees the carnage of all these dead bodies. But Keith and Angelo run out from hiding. They had survived.
Oh, wow.
They're able to tell the police officer who did it, what he looks like, and that he left on foot and that he's armed.
Right.
So they immediately call for backup, and then they get more cops there to secure the scene. And in the meantime, another separate call has gone out to the Schoolhouse Lane neighborhood. And a cop goes over there to, because somebody had reported a body in the street. So that's the two
the
guys
that were away.
So
right.
The cop goes in over there and sees the two bodies, and he's trying to figure out what happened. So he's like, okay, I'm just going to walk across the street and canvass the neighbors to see if they saw what happened. And when he gets across the street, to the monster's house, he opens the door and smells fresh gunpowder. And he flicks on his flashlight, and there's carnage.
Oh, yeah.
And he absolutely can't even count the bodies.
Oh, my God.
So he goes outside, radios for backup. When his backup gets there, he said, we have a homicide. And the other cop says, how many? And he said, I lost count.
Oh, my God.
I can't tell how many people are in there. There's just so much carnage. Mm-hmm. It's awful. So, in the meantime, okay, well, let me tell you about the two guys in the street. So the two guys in the street get loaded. EMS gets there. They load them up into the car. They're both still alive.
Okay.
They go to the nearby hospital where, where Ray Hall is pronounced dead at the hospital. But James Olson is flown to a nearby trauma center in Danville, which I've been to that hospital before.
They have?
Mm-hmm. It's Geisinger. It's where my niece was born. Remember, she was a preemie.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's a really great hospital. So he goes there, and he ends up surviving this.
Really?
Yeah, he does. So in the meantime, the a-hole becomes aware that there's a huge manhunt for him. And so he goes over, he ditches his car, and then armed carjacks another car from a passing motorist. He told that motorist, I've killed everybody. I'm a wanted man. Do you want to stay in the car or not? And the guy says, no, I'd like to get out. So he lets him out. Thank God.
Oh, my gosh.
I know. So, so then he drives the car to the edge of town, walks into a field, lays down, and passes out. Falls asleep.
All the gin and drugs.
And I know an AR-15 is an automatic weapon, but it must just be exhausting, killing and wiping out your entire family.
Oh, yeah. Poor
so he needs a little nappy.
Poor jackass.
Yeah. So around 5:30 a.m., he awakes and hears sirens all around him and immediately runs on foot to his mother's house on Metcalf Street.
Oh, I'll bet she'll be delighted to see him.
Actually, she's very happy to see him.
Oh,
when his mother opens the door, she said she could smell liquor on him and he was crying.
Okay.
Yeah, and he said if she doesn't take him where he wants to go, there will be a shootout right then and there, and she will be hurt. So she says, well, what's wrong? Why are they looking for you? And he just said, well, I've killed everyone. And she said, who is everyone? And he said, I've killed all the girls, Regina, Sharon, all of them. So in a state of shock, his mother, Mary, sits down at the kitchen table and starts to write out her will.
Oh, Lord. She says this is it.
So she finally decides to call the house on Schoolhouse Lane, or call the phone on Schoolhouse Lane to see if anybody answers. and an officer answered. And then she's like, oh, God, I think this might be real. And then the asshole gets on the phone and identifies himself to the cop and says, how are my kids?
What?
Yeah. The officer on the phone says, they're good. They're okay.
What?
But they need your blood because they're very hurt. Can you meet us at the hospital and donate blood?
Oh, what a brilliant man.
It's a lie, but they're hoping that this guy feels like, okay, I got to go give blood to save my children.
Oh my God, that gave me chills.
I know. I mean, they actually did a fake news story on the news.
Wow.
Saying that the children were all in critical condition and they needed blood donations, and that they're hoping that their father, who would be the perfect match, and that would, because they're a blood relative, it would be the quickest way for them to give them blood. So they actually put it on the news that the children,
I have chills.
they're trying desperately to get this man because he is running loose, and they know,
right?
He's armed, he's dangerous, and he doesn't care. He's got nothing to lose, and he doesn't care who he hurts.
Right.
So George doesn't believe them. And he grabs a whole bunch of ammo that I guess he stored at his mom's house, which of course, I mean, that's what your mother's house is for when you get older, to store your crap. So he then instructs his mother to drive him to a rental home that he knows is currently vacant on Monroe Street. So she did what all heaven-sent moms would do and drove him to where he wanted to go. Of
course.
Dropped him off.
There you go, buddy.
Upon her return to home.
Day.
Yeah. Here, let me pack you a lunch. She is met by a flock of police officers at her house by now.
No doubt.
Okay. And it takes them hours to get her to tell them where he was.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So she's no better than he is.
Yeah.
So now it's 7:20 a.m. the next day. They've been tracking this man. The whole town is under siege. It is, please lock your doors. Do not go outside and do not answer the door for anybody.
Right.
Just shelter. Get under a bed. Get in a closet. There is a human storm coming through.
Can you imagine?
These people must have felt like it was the end of the world.
Oh, I would have been beside myself.
Me too. I would have been terrified. And then lock yourself in. But oh my gosh, my daughter is at work. What do I do? Like, what do you do in those situations?
Right,
you can't get to people. Yeah, that's what happened to us, for 9/11. We were desperate to get to our loved ones and couldn't get there. So, this is so terrifying. And my husband remembers the news reports. He remembers the lockdown at schools. He remembers things being canceled, everything. But it was like a ghost town in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Nanticoke, all of these surrounding towns, because they didn't know where he was.
Right.
So when they finally figure out he's at this vacant house on Monroe Street, of course, 110 officers show up. And they try to talk him into coming out. And, of course, they try to tell him that his kids need him and all this stuff. But they finally, it took them 4 hours to finally get him to come out and surrender. So, and it makes me mad because as a parent, I don't understand why they just can't shoot and kill him. They know he's done it.
Right. Yeah, no, that's my thing, too. Why are we negotiating at this point? There's nobody inside the house.
Just firebomb it.
Right. But I do think there are people that feel like criminals need to
I guess they need to be punished.
Right.
That's true. He's got to have his day in court. So, speaking of day in court, June 1983, a trial begins. After a 3-month-long court hearing and ruling as to whether or not the man was mentally competent enough to stand trial. They finally agree in June he can stand trial. So they go on trial. And against the advice of his attorneys, this dumbass decides, I'm going to testify because he has now pleaded guilty. Not guilty.
Oh, really?
He said, I'm not guilty. I didn't do that.
Do it.
So he said that the police had actually killed 9 of his 13 victims. He only shot 4 people. The police killed everybody else.
So he only shot, the 4 that the 2 boys can identify? And
he's probably saying I only shot the women. I didn't shoot my kids.
Wow.
And he claims that the police shot everybody else because it was a conspiracy against him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, Eventually, the trial is over and he is found guilty and given 12 death sentences and 1 life sentence.
Well, that makes me happy.
Well, it shouldn't, because it's not over.
Damn it!
Nope.
What?
November of
How can it not be over?
It's not over, sugar. It's not over. Hold on to your girdle.
Well, I'm going to get it right now and hold on to it.
Hold on to your girdle. Myrtle. November 1985. All of his appeals are exhausted, and his death warrant is finally signed by the governor.
Governor!
But there's more.
Go, governor.
1987, February. I don't know what we're doing between November of 85 and February of 87, but he ain't been executed. Okay?
Well, yeah, I mean, people said.
I guess. So the state supreme, there's a third. Okay, so it goes to the state Supreme Court, and they uphold the verdict, okay? But somehow there's a third circuit court back in Pennsylvania that decides in October of 2001. Now, we're still fancy footing around. I don't know what we're doing. This man is just sitting there rotting. And after a lot of hoopla in the state and federal courts, this court reverses the death sentences due to some kind of a wording given to the jury.
Really?
But it goes back to the state Supreme Court, and they said, take another look. You're wrong.
Okay.
All right. So, finally, circuit court upholds the death penalty. Okay? At one point, there's another order that goes through to force feed the asshole, because now he is on a hunger strike and has gone 16 days without eating or drinking. Who gives a crap? That is saving the taxpayers money.
Exactly.
You're on death row and you want to go on a hunger strike? Let me eat a hamburger in front of you.
Right.
So anyway, so they finally get him back to eating. I mean, I think he's a drama queen. So anyway, October 2004, another death warrant is finally signed.
Okay.
Finally. But wait.
No.
Nope, I'm telling you. December 1st, 2004, the state Supreme Court halts the execution due to the diminished mental state of the prisoner.
Are you kidding me?
It seems that we have some kind of a rule that says, even if you were mentally competent to stand trial, if you're not mentally healthy, we can't kill you.
Are you serious?
I'm not kidding. It's just awful. We need an express lane for executions,
right.
not...
Like, let's don't think about it. Let's just do it.
Yeah, I mean, he stood trial.
Right. The decision was made.
And let's just pretend in his wacky ass mind that somehow the police really did execute 9 of his victims and he only killed 4. That would still be 4 death sentences.
Right.
Let's go. Get it done.
Right.
You can only kill him once.
Right.
But no, you have to be mentally stable for us to put you in the execution chamber. It's unbelievable.
That is unbelievable.
So anyway, as of January 4th, 2018, this maniacal, deranged asshole is still alive and still exists.
What?
On death row.
Are you kidding me?
I searched everywhere. I've not found a single death notice on him. So I assume he's still alive, and he's 77 years old. And he has never, ever been executed for his crimes. Now
that is insane.
It's a kicker. It's a kicker right in the gut.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, what an asshole.
Oh my gosh. There's so many wrong things.
So many wrong things. There's so many wrong things. But what can you do? I mean, I'm sure life isn't great for him on death row, but if you're on death row, you are segregated from the rest of the population.
Right.
So ain't nobody going to shank him.
No, and a lot of times the prisoners end up, they've got a relationship,
they've got a rapport.
They have a rapport with the guards and
the
medical personnel and the warden, and it's.
I just wish
it's not a bad
whatever
life.
jail Jeffrey Epstein went to, perhaps this guy could go there too, and
Maybe.
just like for a little visit.
Yeah. Do you know where he is? What jail he's in?
I tried to find out, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I dug really, 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 really deep, I could, but I just...
Yeah, I know. You wanted to get it done because it's such a terrible...
It was very heavy to do, and the outcome is such a letdown.
I wonder what his mental issue is.
Well, I'm sure at this point he still thinks that he probably thinks there's a race war still going on.
Oh.
And he's got these conspiracy theories about the cops
Right.
and the race and everything. So, but I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't care. We're not saying he wasn't, he was not of diminished capacity when he stood trial.
Right.
He wasn't of diminished capacity when he shot these people. He knew what he was doing was wrong. And he, okay, let's just go out on a limb and say I wake up one morning, I'm fucked up in my head and I kill my whole entire family.
Because he had taken a bottle of pills and
But then to
gin.
have the wherewithal to go outside and kill your 2 possible witnesses.
Right.
Get in the car, drive 4 miles down to another home, go in there and methodically kill each one of those people.
Right.
And he thought he had killed all of them. Like, that's not diminished capacity.
Right.
Sorry,
Right.
it's not.
Right.
And I'm sorry if he sat on death row and didn't get the proper nutrition and his brain rotted a little bit. Why is that our problem?
I agree.
It's just, it's
because
really,
the
it's just
taxpayer money is what funds the prison. So now those poor kids that survived, the victims that survived, and have had to deal with all the crap,
the PTSD that those kids must have.
Now basically paying for this man's care.
Absolutely.
It's awful.
Yeah, it really is. And so this is probably why my husband told me to do this, not just because he was connected to the story personally, because where he lived.
Right.
I think he's trying to say, see, not all of these have that relief at the end, so maybe you shouldn't do this anymore.
Oh.
I'm thinking maybe there was some type of a hidden agenda, because this is a very depressing, they're all depressing because it has to do with murder.
Sure.
But I always like it when we get to the end and it's like justice is served and the gavel drops and everybody can go, finally. There's none of that here.
He seems to have really found some loopholes along the way and is still plugging along out there.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
It is very disappointing.
So there you go. Fa la 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 la.
Happy holidays.
I know.
Wow.
I agree.
Well, I tell you what. I'm still kind of working with these cookies, but there is one you can
smells
taste.
good. Oh, shut your mouth.
It's warm.
I like a warm.
I think the first batch, maybe I didn't put enough of the almond filling. So with these cookies, you make a dough,
God.
and then you make another dough. The first dough is just like an almond extract, sugar, flour, egg, a little bit of milk, and butter. Mm-hmm. The second dough is your almond paste, a little bit of egg, some sugar, a little bit of milk. And you take the first dough and you roll it in a big ball. And then the second dough, you take like a little, almost a tablespoon, but not quite a tablespoon. You roll that into a ball, put it in the center. You flatten the first ball, drop the second dough into the center of that first ball that's been flattened. Then you pinch it around, make a new ball, put it on the pan, flatten it with your hand, and you cook it. So it's supposed to have that almond paste center. I'm not quite sure.
Are these the ones that you think you messed up?
Uh-huh.
Oh, Lord. I don't feel that way at all. These are fantastic.
Yeah, I think they're pretty good, but they're not exactly like the ones we get from Fresh Market,
okay.
But they are very flavorful and delicious.
No, very good. I can't wait to taste the ones you think aren't messed up.
I don't know. You know what's a new recipe? I never seen it before.
No, it's
good.
good.
You just never know how something like this is going to turn
out. And that's why I'm here, sugar.
Yes,
to tell you. I will tell you if it's not good. You cannot put that out in the public. I shall take this off your hands. So, okay. Well, you keep on going, and you can start talking about your murder soon.
Okay, I'll talk about my murder. North Carolina border in southeastern Virginia, called Franklin.
Franklin, Virginia.
I know you know that, but our listeners may not. And it was tiny little southern town.
So I think it had, when we were growing up, maybe, I think I read some statistics on it that maybe 8,000 people.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah. And this was back in the 80s. So when it was thriving, because it was a paper mill town. So there were a lot of people there working at the paper mill, and A lot of executives, and of course the family that started the paper mill lived there. So,
oh yeah, royalty.
Yeah,
small town royalty.
Yeah, I mean, as a matter of fact, we actually had Elizabeth Taylor come and stay with one of the families that we knew, and we went to church with her. I would
yes,
never
we did.
in my life forget
she was not nice
with Elizabeth Taylor. Well, she was
it's
drunk.
when she was with it's when she was with Warner.
Yeah, she was drunk.
She was very
church,
drunk.
But that's okay. She was lovely.
Okay.
Pretty. Not personality-wise, but she was pretty. She was drunk.
She was drunk.
Yeah. So anyway, small town USA. And we had a woman that lived in town, and our dad owned a drugstore, a small little drugstore in the center of town. So we got to see a lot of the people that lived in town that we didn't necessarily know from social circles, but people who were customers of our dad's. Mm-hmm. And this woman, they called her Cy. Her last name was Davis. You always knew she was coming because she would drive a convertible Corvette decked out in Redskins.
Cherry red Corvette.
Redskins, everything. She was a huge Redskins fan.
Yes, we were born and raised in Redskins territory, which is why I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan today.
And she wore skirts that were perhaps a little too short for her age.
I remember her. I went to school with her granddaughter.
Maybe some go-go boot type.
Yeah, she definitely had those go-go boots on. I remember that. And she had skinny legs.
Very skinny legs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And she did like a short skirt.
80s.
Yeah.
We're talking about a woman in her 80s right now.
Yeah.
So,
she was quite the character.
Cy took on a lover.
Of course she did. Who else? What else do you do at that age when you can still sport a mini skirt and go-go boots?
Right. Who was considerably younger than she was. He was in his 60s, early 60s, if that. And of course she was in her 80s. And
that's nice.
They had...
I mean, doesn't there come a point where age just is a number?
I mean, evidently in this world, yes. As a matter of fact, it does.
I mean, there is a point. I don't know what point that is, but there is a point, I think, where age is just a number.
Right. So her boyfriend was not from our town, and coming from a small town, it's not easy to fit in necessarily when you're an outsider, where we have, our thing and growing up, our parents, our grandparents, the first question when you introduced somebody to them was, who are your people?
Yes.
They wanted to know who you were related to so they could figure out what family you come from so they could determine if you're worthy enough for a handshake.
Yes.
Or a stand-up. Mm-hmm. So this fella did not come from our town. And
I used to hear, who does he belong to?
Who does he belong to? Mm-hmm. Right. Who are your people? But, and our grandmother always said it's all in who you know. It's all about who you know. That's right. Mm-hmm. So Cy had her little relationship going, and I remember her house as like an older house on the outskirts of town, but on the right side of the railroad tracks, not on the wrong side of the railroad tracks. Oh, them damn railroad tracks! It really did separate our railroad tracks. It's just you can't make this stuff up. You really can't. Well, unfortunately, Cy's boyfriend was a raging alcoholic. So he fit right in. Right. So, and they liked to party, no question. That tailgating, that's a lot of fun. But. That is, and I can remember tailgating out in a field when there was no athletic event going on. Right. My whole life growing up was a tailgating. Right. And now Cy was related to the former sheriff in town. That was her son-in-law. Her daughter's husband. Yes. Right. But she also was the granddaughter of the first mayor of Franklin. She certainly was. So she definitely came from... She had long roots. Yeah, her family was steeped in the history of that town. Absolutely. So, even though she was a little bit of a character, she was still a very well-respected woman in the community. Yes. And, now she's got this connection where her son-in-law, Grady, is the former police chief in town. Yep. Got pulled over by him one day. Oh. Twice. Did you get a ticket? The first time, no. I was on the way. I was running late. I was in high school, and I was in our big purple station wagon. Right. The one with the seat in the way back that you rode backwards in.
Yeah, used to.
How did we ever live through that?
I don't even know.
Wagon?
Because the first station wagon we had no back seat, and we laid down in the back all the time. And there was a hole. There was a hole in that back seat, or the floor of that back, whatever it was, compartment. And you could watch the road go by in that hole. So yeah,
mesmerizing. It's how you fell asleep in that little long trip.
Exactly. So of course, our mama moved in a station wagon, and that's old station wagon, one with the paneling on it. When she was pregnant with me, and they moved to the Eastern Shore, she laid down in the back of that station wagon to get to the Eastern Shore because she was on bed rest.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So that station wagon was long. We had that for a long time, and then we upgraded to this very fancy purple. It looked like Barney station wagon that had 3 seats in it. It was a novel idea for a family of 5 that toted everybody else's kids around too.
It was not purple.
Well,
it was burgundy.
It was like a maroon purple.
It was burgundy, and then the children waxed it. And
it turned purple.
Right, the color faded, just like what happened when we had the same color Volvo years later.
Yeah, that's
I waxed it one day for
Dad. Were you putting like floor wax on it? What the heck? I don't even know.
Car wax, but then I tried to rinse it off, and it sat or whatever, and
sat too long.
We went to take it off. The color came off of it, and
it was beautiful.
Daddy was like, Ann Varner.
So anyway,
so you got pulled over by Grady.
On the way to school one day. I was actually on the way to my friend Laura's house before school because my cheerleading skirt was at her house, and we had to wear a cheerleading outfit. So he pulled me, and before I even got to school, he had told Daddy. He had driven straight to the pharmacy, walked in and said, "Harry, I pulled over your daughter, your older daughter today. You got to tell her slow down."
He probably didn't even have to say older because Daddy would have known.
Yeah, he probably just said, "I pulled your girl over," and Daddy was like, "That Karen Devaney, oh my God." So anyway, and then I years later in college, I might have been because I was driving my Buick, that old Buick Skylark I had. And I was riding through town. It's right when the seatbelt laws came out.
Right.
And I didn't have no seatbelt on.
Uh-oh.
So he pulled me. I was going 32 in a 25. So he didn't give me a ticket for speeding, but he gave me a ticket for not wearing my seatbelt.
Really?
Yes, $25.
Wow.
I was so mad.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet you were
and both
really
times
mad.
It was Grady. It wasn't even one of his employees. It was like I'm being pulled over by the police chief himself.
And I bet you were especially mad because you can normally talk your way out of stuff
I couldn't talk my way out of that one. Mm-mm.
That probably was after we had the party that he came to our house that he had to help us
vacate the premises of all the unknown party goers.
Exactly. All right, so we're going to get back to this little tale of Miss Cy Davis. So Cy and her boyfriend are together for a while, and after so many years, the relationship was less romantic and more roommatey, I guess you could call. And the boyfriend really got bad with his alcoholism, and he and Cy would get into some scuffles.
Oh gosh.
Well, one day, Cy gave a call to her son-in-law Grady and said,
who was retired by now.
Who was retired by this time, and said, I think you need to come to my house. Something's wrong.
Something is not right. I just can't put my finger on it. I don't know what's
happening. And Grady and his wife jump in their car and drive over. Now, Franklin is tiny. It probably took them less than 5 minutes.
I actually think they lived on the same street.
They may have.
Yeah.
They may have. So Grady jumps in his vehicle and drives over. And he says, what's going on? And she said, I think you need to go upstairs and look in that bedroom. So she takes Grady in, and there's the boyfriend is in bed, and he is covered in bruises. And he's barely conscious.
And he's bloody.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh, by the way, downstairs in the kitchen, there's a lot of blood.
There's blood in the kitchen.
Which immediately, any good daughter is going to start cleaning that stuff up because somebody done bled in the kitchen.
She started cleaning some stuff up,
for my mama.
And then Grady said, I think you ought to call 911. And he went over to the boyfriend and says, it looks like you've taken a tumble.
You've had quite a spill.
You've had a spill.
And you spilled all the way upstairs into your bed.
Right. So the EMS workers get there, and they come in, and they are working on this boyfriend a little bit, and they load him up and take him out, and they leave and take this fella to the hospital, and this fella dies from blunt force trauma to the head.
He also had a heart attack. Or, no, I think Cy said she thought he had a heart attack.
Right.
And fallen.
Yes, that he had fallen, had a heart attack, but no. No.
That's what she said.
Right. So
that's why it didn't seem right.
It did not seem right. And there was, so you remember Grady's retired, and there may have been some speculation in town that maybe Grady was a little less than honest.
Okay.
So, in his workings when he was a police officer, that maybe he had not been truthful in his job.
That was the speculation.
That was the speculation.
Never
so
proven.
There were those in an authoritative position that felt like he wasn't trustworthy enough to maybe give them a description of the scene. So they did send people in to take pictures of the scene because they weren't really sure what happens, and you got to investigate if somebody comes in and they're dying of blunt force trauma, because they're like, what the hell? Well, it turns out that they believe Cy had beaten this man with a baseball bat, that they had an argument.
I mean, it happens.
Right. There's a lot of speculation about Cy. She was not a big woman. She was little. You know, I
think she weighed 97 pounds or something. Like, she was a tiny woman.
She was little.
And 80.
And she was in her 80s at this point. And there were people who said, there's no way. How could she...
listen, your dog Trout wants in on the podcast. What a shocker. What a Christmas miracle.
I know. I think he's, I don't even know what he's thinking.
I don't know what he's thinking.
He got vaccines yesterday, and he
don't feel real good.
He doesn't do well with vaccines, and
poor little guy.
Bless his heart.
I'm actually going to go easy on him today because he got what my daughter used to call a blood shot.
He did. He got a blood shot.
He got a blood shot, and he don't feel real good. So
exactly.
I'm going to ease up on him today.
So I remember when this whole thing happened with Cy Davis and her getting arrested, and everybody's like, oh my God, what are you talking about? And it was the talk of the town. They did their investigation, and they determined that Cy had in fact killed this boyfriend, and they went to trial. And while they were at the trial, they pulled one of the EMS workers up on the stand, and they showed him some of the pictures from the scene where he had come in and taken the boyfriend to the hospital. And he's looking at pictures, and he's saying, this is not what that scene looked like, but something's wrong with this.
So the difference was when they got to the bedroom to work on this man, who I don't know his name, and that's a horrible thing because he's the victim. But when they got to him and worked on him, he remembers the scene a certain way, but the pictures of what the text took from the police officers, those pictures from the crime scene, it was littered with empty booze bottles.
Exactly.
And they were everywhere. They were around the bed.
Right.
They were up on the dresser. They covered every surface.
Right.
And this guy said, I would have remembered if I had to step over glass bottles.
Right.
And I didn't.
Right.
So his remembrance of the scene was completely different than the pictures. And so the speculation was that they were trying to, and she had said the whole time he was a heavy drinker, and he had a heart attack, and he fell, and at some point he got himself back up in bed, and when I went to check on him, he seemed like he was not doing well.
Right. So,
and so there was some speculation that perhaps the retired police chief had a hand in rearranging some things at the scene.
Plus the, blood that was in the kitchen had been cleaned up, but they did find some traces of that blood in the kitchen.
Yes.
And I remember it took them a long
and she
time
said he
to
had a nosebleed.
Right.
And she had a nose, like she said, I get nosebleeds, and he had a nosebleed when he fell from his heart attack. So
we were all just standing around bleeding from our nose in the
kitchen.
kitchen.
That's what we do.
On Saturday afternoon, and it's good.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
It was, and it took them a really long time to go to trial. And eventually they did find her guilty. Now,
they arrested her, but she did not stay in jail. She was the oldest person at that point that they had arrested.
And a woman.
Right. And they did not feel comfortable putting an elderly woman that weighed 97 pounds in jail. Right. They just said, we can't do it. So she stayed at her house for the trial, and she had free range. Like at that point, she was still getting up every day and going. She had a routine,
right?
That she would go to the post office and to the market and to the bank every single day.
Yeah,
people still saw her out and about, and she was, saying, "I can't believe that they're doing this to me. Do I look like somebody that could beat somebody to death?"
Right, and she really was a frail old woman, and
she was, but she wasn't, because she got around just fine, and she did like to party, and she danced.
She definitely played the victim. She played it up, and I think,
I think all of us were in disbelief,
right? And we had People Magazine came in and did an article,
and did a whole article, yes.
And I think that's the first time our town had ever been in like a national publication, especially for something like this.
Exactly.
And she's quoted in the article like, "Look at me, I'm so small and weak," and that's not really the personality I remember about Cy Davis.
A personality that was larger in life, and she got around just fine. She drove that car all the time. She did her own grocery shopping. She did her own errands and banking, and I remember her as being a very vital personality and a strong woman.
Right.
Just people used to marvel at the fact that she was 80 and still carrying on like she was carrying on. So,
and they didn't really know what to do with her once she was found guilty of the crime. They didn't know what to do with her, and they certainly were not going to put her in jail.
Well, and this actually went all the way to the state Supreme Court, because they were trying to figure out what to do with her, because even in the prison system of Virginia, they had never incarcerated a female that old, and they absolutely did not feel like they could house her and give her the health care that she needed her and put her in a population of people that were as frail as her. Mm-hmm. And they didn't think that she was going to survive in jail.
Right. So she ended up getting 3 months, I think it was 3 months of house arrest. Or was it longer than that? It was less than a year.
Yeah, it was either 3 months or 6 months on house arrest.
Yeah.
Where she had to be
She
in
just
her
had
house.
to wear an ankle monitor.
Yeah.
She could still get out some, but she had to wear an ankle monitor. But
and then after that, she was free as a bird.
Right. She didn't. She passed away, I think, in her late 80s.
Yeah, she didn't live a year after that.
It took a lot out of her, but there is a conspiracy theory, I guess, out there that says that, maybe she was too frail and she couldn't have done the kind of damage that had been done to this man.
But then who could?
Well, they're thinking maybe Grady did it.
Well, but that was never.
He had her take the fall for it because he knew she wouldn't go to jail.
Right. I think the biggest problem was there was we were in a small town, and it was a very gossipy town, by the way. And I think there was a lot of public speculation of so many angles, but I think it was really difficult on the police officers because this man used to be their boss.
Right.
And he was highly respected by the men that worked for him. And so that speculation, it was just speculation. Nobody really followed up on investigating if he had any hand in that or not.
Right.
So, I just think that...
Actually, I want to say what happened was she took an Alford plea.
She did take an Alford plea.
She took an Alford plea.
She said there's enough
evidence that if we went to trial, that way they kept her up. But it took forever for them to get to... I want to say it was close to 3 years before it ever came to a conclusion. And you also have to remember... At the time, Franklin was not a city. It was still a town.
Yes.
So there was no courthouse in that town. Any kind of crime or court case went to the county court, which was in Cortland, Virginia, just 15
So
minutes
the crazy
away.
thing is the town of Franklin was the town seat of was the main hub.
Right.
Except for the courts. And the courts were in Cortland in Southampton County, which Franklin's in that county, but normally it's like everything's in the hub, in the town seat, and it was kind of jumbled around a little bit. So it's I don't know. I think that there was just there's a lot of mystery and play in it, and it was the talk of the town for years.
Right.
And there was a lot of speculation and a lot of conspiracy theories, but nothing was ever proven. And so I think once she took that plea, then they were at the point where, okay, what do we do with her?
Right, now what?
And at that point, her health was not great.
Right.
And so now she's, her health is diminishing, and they are not going to put her in a prison.
No. So
then it becomes, okay, now what do we do with her? And how long can you put this woman on house arrest in Franklin, Virginia?
Right.
So I think at that point, being on house arrest was almost like a redundancy, because I think by then her health had declined enough that she probably wasn't doing a whole lot for herself anyway by then.
No, I don't think so. I think that her daughter and Grady looked after her. And
her grandchildren, I know, were very close to her and looked after her.
Took things in for her. And
yeah.
And it was really the first time, we were in college at the time when it happened. But it was the first time I can remember. I know that there were murders in that town because I can remember a few that impacted the town that we'll talk about later. But, in other podcasts later, because
stay tuned.
For such a small town, there seemed to be an awful lot of murders happening in that area.
We get a lot of information from our town that we lived in before.
So that was really interesting. I thought that story was an interesting story.
They are interesting, and there are articles. I mean, the New York Times even did an article on her during this.
They did. It was a really big deal because of her age.
Because of her age.
So,
and the court system couldn't figure out what to do with her.
We never really know what happened in that house.
Well, I think there's two people that know.
Of course. That's right. And they're both dead.
It's the victim and whoever made him a victim.
Right. That's true. That's very true.
So I don't think so. But that's a good one, Sugar. Thank you. That's a true hometown murder for us, because.
So, would you like to try an almond cookie? They're warm out of the oven.
I would love to. And this is from the batch that you say is better.
I think this is a better batch.
God, I love it when they're warm.
Yeah.
Oh, you knock it out of the park by giving me a warm treat. So hold on, let me get this. Mm-hmm.
So, one thing that will never be a shortage of talking about is true crime. Because just this week alone... Or food, right. Just this week alone, there was that case that came out of that woman, I want to say she was in Texas, that disappeared with her newborn. Did you see that one?
No.
And, they had not an Amber Alert out, but a missing persons alert out because she had dropped her 6-year-old son off at school and then disappeared. She had a 3-week-old baby. No. And this week they found the mother's body. And they found the baby alive, living with somebody in a house close by. And this woman was actually a really good friend of the woman who was murdered. I don't know all the details. We'll have to maybe do that one for our podcast when we found out all of the information. The baby is perfectly healthy, had been well cared for. But yeah, this was a friend of hers who was at the hospital when she gave birth.
And they think she murdered her.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so awful.
They do. They think that she murdered her and told people that she had a baby.
Oh my God, people are crazy.
I know. So we'll do that one.
Yep.
No, what'd you think of that cookie?
Oh, Sugar, it's so good. We're going to sign off now because I'm going to eat about 5 more of these cookies. So I want everybody out there to stay sweet.
And y'all have a great week.
Bye now.
Bye.